Good morning, guys. Today's video is going to be a little bit different than it normally is. I've been making sourdough bread like every week, so I'm going to show you how I do it. I'm very confident in the recipe now, and I'm going to make a loaf today for my friend and her family. So I figured I'd take a couple video clips of what I actually do here. So as far as the ingredients go, this is my starter. I actually have several because I like to bake with it. As you can see, super bubbly, and it has doubled in size, which means it's ready. I took this out of the fridge last night. I had just fed it recently, so I took it out of the fridge last night and I let it sit. And because my house is on the cooler side, it definitely takes like a full, night, overnight to rise. It's also not a super strong starter just yet because it's only about like 2 months old, I think. So it does take the full overnight, but it is ready to bake with. And so we have that. And I will be using my handy dandy kitchen scale to measure out 150 grams, maybe a little bit more because it's not a super strong starter. So about 150 grams of starter, bubbly active starter. All right, this is 25 grams of extra virgin olive oil, 10 grams of sea salt, 250 grams of spring water, not tap water, spring water, because the chemicals in tap water actually can kill the sourdough bacteria. I don't want to say bacteria, it's not that, it's wild yeast. It could kill, the chlorine can kill it, and fluoride, it's just much better to use spring water. So this is 250 grams of the spring water, and then I have there 500 grams of King Arthur bread flour, unbleached bread flour. Again, we don't want the chlorine to kill our wild yeast. So what I'm going to do is with the water, I have to heat it up a little bit. So I'm going to pour that into a mug and heat it up. I do about 45 seconds in the microwave, which brings it to approximately 110 degrees Fahrenheit. So you would have to do the math to convert that to Celsius, but you don't want it to be too warm because again, it could kill the yeast. So 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Get about 45 seconds. I'll heat that up and then I'll show you how I mix it. Oh, and I also have to measure this out to the 150 grams. I'm going to use my scale and measure this out to the 150 grams of starter. Okay, so I just heated this water up, and then now what I'm going to do is, hold on, let me get this back in frame a little bit. It's going to be a little bit hard to do one-handed. Hopefully I can get it all. All right, that's the olive oil that's going to go in first. I'm going to just stir it just a little bit. It doesn't have to be completely incorporated at this point because we'll get to that. Just giving this this distilled water, or spring water rather, 1 second to cool down just by 1 degree, really. All right, then next goes in the water. And this I will thoroughly stir. I'm deciding to call my sourdough a basic sourdough for a not so basic bitch. Just kidding. All right, there we go. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour in half of the flour. Then, oh no, shit. Gotta bleep that out, right? All right, then after I pour half the flour, I'll do the salt. Now you'll find conflicting views on how people do salt in their sourdough. Now I use sea salt, but apparently salt can stunt the proofing process of sourdough because it will kill some of the yeast. So some people will say that you need to add it in different stages. Because I have not been doing this forever, I have found this recipe and it's been working every single time. I really haven't had much of an issue with salt killing the yeast or anything like that, killing the starter. So this is how I do it, and because I'm baking this for a friend of mine, I do not want to mess around with doing the salt a different way. You know, this is my tried and true recipe. Now, when I'm making a loaf for me and my family, I actually do intend on, you know, playing around with different techniques that I've found, because I don't mind experimenting with my family, but for my friend, I'm going to do what I know works. So now I'm just going to take 1 second and knead this a little bit. You'll see it's going to actually be quite a shaggy dough in the beginning. But so let me do that and I'll clip back in a second. Okay, so I incorporated all of the ingredients. Everything is wet. And if you do try to make this at home, this is a very sticky dough at this stage. You can see it's super shaggy. It's not like a soft Italian bread or a soft pizza dough where it's like beautiful and smooth. And what we don't want to do, and if you are, you know, any level of baker where you've made bread before, normally with other breads, like Italian breads, you're adding more flour as you need to create this soft, more supple dough. With sourdough, you do not want to add a bunch more flour because that will dry out the bread. This is also why, as I've progressed as a baker, I've been baking for at least probably like 20 years at this point. I'm 37, so you know, I've been baking for a long time, and I used to really overdo it with flour, and I used to only measure by measuring cup. As I progressed in my baking, now this is why I do use a digital food scale, because it's important to really not overdo it with your ingredients, and flour particularly will cause you to have dried out bread, you know, no matter what. Now, this also is dependent on the humidity in your house. If you live in the South, well, I mean, it gets fairly humid in New Jersey too, but if you live somewhere where it's like a sauna, you might need to actually add a little bit more flour, because you don't want, you know, you also don't want the humidity to affect everything that's going on. So anyway, what I do now is I'm going to get a very almost wet kitchen towel. I mean, very damp kitchen towel, and I will cover this. I'm going to try to find the warmest spot in my house, and after about 30 minutes I'll come back and show you what, you know, the next step will be. And this will continue actually throughout the rest of the day. I will be doing little clips of exactly what I'm doing here. It's a very long process. Sourdough does not happen in a short time like some of the other breads do, but it is worth it. And you know, it has become a labor of love, and everybody loves my sourdough. They really do. Actually, last night, I didn't get finished baking until probably around 9:30, and then it has to sit for an hour before you slice it. My husband specifically stayed up late. He had work this morning. He stayed up late last night just to have a fresh piece of the bread, which was, you know, one of the biggest compliments you can get actually as a baker. So I'm going to cover this. Like I said, we're going to wait 30 minutes and I will be back to show you what I do then. All right, everybody, I am back. It has been 30 minutes. I just removed the towel. So now I'm going to take a second and smooth this ball out. Basically, I'm going to knead it just a little bit, probably under a minute, knead it, smooth it out. Again, incorporate all of the lumps and bumps, and I'll show you what it looks like afterward. Okay, so I just did a little kneading, kind of pulling everything together and smoothing it out just a little bit. You could see it is still not entirely smooth, and that is perfectly fine. That's exactly where it should be at this stage. So now I will recover with, and if my towel has dried out at all, I will re-wet my towel with hot water, string it out a little bit, and recover. And then in 30 minutes from now, I will be back to show you the next step. All right, I'll see you on the other side. Welcome back, folks. So it has been 30 minutes. And now what we're going to do is a sourdough must, in my opinion, which is called the stretch and fold. All right, so what you do is you're taking your dough, pulling it out, okay, and folding it. And you spin your bowl, and you continue to do this all the way around. I'm very impressed with myself that I can manage this one-handed. And one more time to complete the circle. Stretching it out and folding it. Okay, we did one full rotation, and now we're going to cover it again, and we will actually be repeating this stretch and fold every 30 to 45 minutes for a complete several hours. I mean, we're going to be doing this every 30 to 45 minutes for probably another 6 additional stretch and folds. And as the dough ferments, as all of this ferments, you're going to start to notice bubbles popping, and it's going to start crackling, and all of these wonderful things are going to start happening with this dough. So I'm not going to keep filming this every 30 to 45 minutes, but just know at this point, again, we're going to still time it in another 30 to 45 minutes, do another stretch and fold, replace the towel, and just keep on doing that, 5 more times at this point. So once, several hours down the line, I'll come back after the last stretch and fold and just give a very brief wrap up of that part of the process. All right, I'll see you guys later. All right, guys, I did just fold this for the last time. I wish I had my light on so you could see a little bit better. I folded it for the last time, and now I will literally just let it rise for, let me see, well, it is 4 o'clock right now, so probably another 3 hours. I'll let this rise. Really, it's going to have to be doubled in size. It's already super puffy and lots of air bubbles forming from the fermentation process, but now we just let it go. Yeah, we started this at 10:30 this morning, so obviously this is a day-long process. And later on, I will fill you guys in on what else is going on. All right, see you later. Okay, guys, what's up? So now it is actually close to 7 o'clock tonight, and you can see the dough is much bigger, nice and puffy. Now all we have to do is shape it. So what I did is I put a little flour down, not a whole lot, but a little bit. And now I'll show you what comes next. All right, so I just gently picked it up off the bowl, and what you do is you take one section and pull it to the center. Then you take the other section, pull it to the center. And you do that all the way around the whole thing until it's shaped in a circle, and then you'll have a nice smooth loaf on top. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll show you what it looks like afterward. Okay, so as you can see, I went all the way around, stretched the dough over, and tucked it into the center. Look at my little air bubble filled with nice aeration from our natural sourdough wild yeast. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it over, and we're going to continue to shape this. So let me do that, and I'll be right back. All right, so you can see it has kind of a, it's formed its shape. Definitely much different from this morning. So now what you do, and you don't want to have like a ton of flour on the bottom by this point, because what you're going to do is take your hand around and you need a little bit of resistance on the bottom where it's sticking to your countertop. And then you just pull it, tucking a little bit under as you go, and get the nicest shape that you can. Alright, now we need to prepare our Dutch oven. So with that, give me 1 second, I'll be right back. Okay, so I have my Dutch oven out, and what I'm going to do is I have some, let me show you this, cornmeal. Okay, we're just going to dust the bottom of the pan with cornmeal. Doesn't need to be a crazy thick layer, but it is nice to make sure you're just completely coated. And also what I like to do if I have it is sprinkle sesame seeds on the bottom as well. I do not have any. I just used the last of my sesame seeds yesterday, so cornmeal will be perfectly fine. And then what you would do, I'm going to try to do this one-handed. What you do, put your beautiful loaf inside the Dutch oven and I'm going to take a tiny bit of flour and just dust the top here. And what this helps is when you're going to score the dough, it helps to get cleaner lines from your razor or your knife, whatever you're using. If the dough is too sticky on top, you'll tend to rip the dough as opposed to cutting it nicely through. So this is just for aesthetic purposes, but I like to do it because through experience, I could just tell it comes out a little bit nicer. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to cover this with the Dutch oven lid, and this needs to sit for 30 more minutes just to do a final puff. And while this is sitting for that 30 minutes, I'm going to heat up my tabletop oven. This I found dramatically increases the moisture of the bread. When I do it in my regular oven, it tends to dry out. It's still good, but the bread definitely keeps more moisture in the tabletop oven. So while this is sitting, I'm going to heat up my oven to 450 degrees. And then I'll show you what it looks like when we're ready to bake it. All right, see you guys later. All right, guys, so this is ready to go into the oven. So now what I'm going to do, you can see I have an X-Acto knife, blade at least. It's my fancy bread slicer. I forget what it's called. Is it called a lame? I don't know. So of course lots of people do very fancy designs. Some people just make a couple dashes. This right here is something I've found to be very pretty and hard to mess up. Okay, honey, hang on. There we go. So now I'm going to put this here cap on and turn the temperature down on the oven to 400. Remember, it was at 450 before, so now I'm going to turn it down to 400 and set a timer for 20 minutes. And once that timer goes off, I'm going to lift this lid off, and I'm going to continue to cook it for another 40 minutes. And at 40 minutes, you could test the bread. The internal temperature should read, I want to say like 400, what am I thinking of? 110 or 120, something around that. I could be off though. I'm kind of tired. It's been a long day. But anyway, you'll be able to tell when it is done. It will be golden brown. And at that point, we're going to take it out and cool it down. All right, guys, I'll see you after this baby is done. Okay, I did want to show you guys, I just pulled the lid off. So you'll see the dough is cooking. However, it is not brown whatsoever. So what this does is this steams the bread. And after the lid is removed, that's when it will start to brown. All right, guys, we'll see you when it's done. All right, guys, so there you have it. She is done. Queen sourdough. It is going on 9 o'clock at night. So this took about 10 hours of actual preparation plus the sourdough starter sitting overnight. So it's not a short process, but it's worth it for sure. And I think it looks great. I have a little hole there from testing the internal temperature. You definitely want the internal temperature to be good, which actually is 205 to 210, not what I said previously at all. But I'm glad I got to correct that for you. All right, well, that's it. I hope everybody makes their sourdough. Maybe I'll do one on starter next. All right, peace out.